Can you lay down, please? Thank you, baby. I know. You know mommy's sad, and that's okay. Yes, you know mommy's sad, and I appreciate your love. You're such a good girl. Can you lay down? Okay. I never thought that I would be recording a video like this. Miscarriage is unfortunately very common, but you never think that it's going to happen to you. I know that I don't have all of the right words to say, but I do know that you are not alone. I think it's important to share my story to hopefully help someone who's going through the same thing. Talking about it on here is really therapeutic for me, and I'm hoping that I can get some closure. This video may be very hard for me to get through. Losing a child is and was my worst fear. If you watched my IUI number 2 video, you would have heard me say that. This experience has been the most difficult, gut-wrenching, and painful thing I have ever been through. So let's start from the beginning. I have my notes here to remind me of some of the details that I wanted to mention in this video. So I found out I was pregnant at about 4 weeks, and I called my fertility specialist to set up an appointment to get my HCG blood test done to confirm that I was indeed pregnant. So I went in and they drew my blood, and my results came back at 28.5, which confirmed that I was definitely pregnant. They wanted me to come back 2 days later just to see if the number had doubled or tripled, but either way, we wanted the numbers to increase, and that just showed that this baby was growing and that it was healthy. So at 4 weeks and 2 days, I went in and got my blood drawn, and the results were 92.4. So that was really exciting because that tells me that things were going really well. So then I had to go back a few days later for the 3rd time just to make sure that things were progressing nicely. So I went back at 4 weeks and 6 days, and my HCG level was at 829. So this shot up from being under 100 to 829. So we were super excited. This pregnancy looked really promising. With those kind of numbers, I was kind of concerned that maybe we had multiple babies in there. I'm not really sure, how those numbers are supposed to increase, but that it shot up so much. Friends and family were joking that we had possibly twins or triplets in there. So I put everything into my app, said that I was pregnant. I calculated my due date, and it said that the due date should be March 29th. Give or take a few days. We were going to confirm the true due date if I made it to 7 weeks with the ultrasound appointment that we had scheduled with the fertility clinic. So since this looked like such a strong pregnancy, we went ahead and we ordered the crib, the dresser, and pictures. You can see the crib in the box behind me and the pictures that we ordered. The nursery design I was going for was more of like a soft forest theme with mountains and trees, and we were maybe going to include some baby bears and animals, and so I had the whole nursery planned out in my head. I even had a whole Pinterest board dedicated to this nursery. I knew it was a little bit early to start buying things for baby, but we were so excited. We've been waiting 1 year and 9 months for this to happen, and it was finally here. So my husband said, you know what, let's just slowly start buying things now. So then in 8 months, we have a full nursery, we're ready to go, and we don't have to stress. We, of course, told our immediate family and our best friends the news. Since I was still in the first trimester, I didn't want to tell coworkers or neighbors or any other extended family, just in case of a situation like we're going through right now. So I went ahead and I created a private registry on Target and on Amazon. I didn't want to make it public because not everybody knew that I was pregnant, and just in case they stumbled across the list, I didn't want them to ask any questions. So as the days went on, everything looked great. I had a few symptoms. If you want, you can check out my video on my early pregnancy symptoms that I had in up to the first, I think it was 5 weeks at that point. I felt healthy and I figured baby was healthy. So every day my husband and I would check our app, which was, we did the Ovia app and Baby Center, just to see how baby's development was doing. It's so fascinating to learn when the heart is finally beating. Do they have eyes? When do they get ears? What do they look like? And so this app would walk us through all of the development that was happening to our little baby. And it would give us a size comparison to how big the baby was at that time. So like I said, we waited for this baby for 1 year and 9 months. We've been struggling with unexplained infertility, and this was my very first positive pregnancy test in that time. So naturally, we were so excited. Finally, it was our turn to be pregnant. It was our turn to have a baby. When it felt like the world around us, everybody was pregnant. Everybody was getting pregnant easily. And for some reason, it just wasn't happening for us. So when we finally got that positive pregnancy test, our world completely changed. We dreamed about this baby. What will they look like? Will it be a boy? Will it be a girl? Will they like hockey? Or will they want to be in gymnastics? What kind of personality will they have? Will they have our sense of humor? Will they think that we're dumb and silly? We talked about baby and what they would be like every single day. So we were getting close to my 7-week mark, and I had my ultrasound scheduled to hear the heartbeat and to measure the size of baby, and that would give us an accurate due date. Towards the end of the day, before our appointment, I had peanut butter colored spotting. It was very, very light, and so I was a little bit concerned, but I knew from watching videos online, reading, and talking to people that some spotting in your first trimester was normal. So I called my best friend and she reassured me that yes, it's okay, it can happen. Luckily, you have your ultrasound appointment tomorrow, so you'll get to hear the heartbeat, and we're all praying that it's strong and that your baby will be healthy. So she reassured me, don't worry. If you're not having any cramping or any other symptoms, everything should be okay. So I went to bed, and I woke up the next day, the day of our appointment, and I had a little bit of spotting still, but this time it was a darker brown. So I started to get more worried. Our appointment wasn't until 3 o'clock that afternoon. So I just figured, just get through the day, just keep thinking positive thoughts, baby's healthy, mommy's healthy, everything's gonna be okay, spotting is normal. So I went through my day, and the spotting started to get a little bit darker with every few passing hours. Deep in my gut, I felt like something wasn't right, but since we had our appointment, I wasn't gonna worry about it until the doctor, gave me the ultrasound, and if we heard a heartbeat, then I knew that we'd be okay. So during the day, while I had the spotting getting darker and darker, I did feel some twinges in my abdomen, but I also read that that's also common to have a little bit of spotting. You may have a little bit of cramping in your first trimester, but as long as you're not heavily bleeding or having really bad cramping, that you should be okay. So finally, it was time for the appointment, and my anxiety was through the roof. Nothing had gotten better. I started to feel a little bit worse, cramping-wise, but I just didn't want to think that anything was happening at that point. I wanted the doctor to check and confirm that everything was going to be okay. So we do a transvaginal ultrasound with the doctor and the tech, and they're kind of explaining what they're looking at. They're looking at my ovaries, they're looking at my uterus, and they don't see anything on the scan in my cervix. She explained that normally there's a big black circle like this in your uterine lining, and you'll see maybe like something in the middle, or like you'll see like the sac, it will be black, and then you should see like a little dot. And so that's what they were looking for in my ultrasound. And unfortunately, they didn't see anything. Looking at the picture of my uterus in the ultrasound, it looked just like it did during follicle checks. The lining of my uterus looked nice and thick, but I wasn't seeing that black sac that she was talking about either. So immediately my heart sank. And she told us that she was so sorry, but she didn't think it was going to be a viable pregnancy based on what she saw. So she wanted to just confirm with an HCG test. So my husband and I pulled ourselves together, wiped our tears, and walked out to the waiting room to wait for the technician to take me back to do an HCG test. So she explained that if my HCG was dropping, then that meant that I was currently having a miscarriage and that my body was getting rid of it naturally. If my HCG was still very high, then she was going to be concerned that I could be having an ectopic pregnancy, which would be very dangerous for me, because if that were to rupture in my fallopian tube, I would have internal bleeding, severe pain, and I might even need surgery. So I did a little bit of digging on what that surgery would be, just because I was curious, if that's what it was, what would I have to experience? And it sounded like they would have to go in and scrape the material from your fallopian tube. If it's really bad, they would have to take the fallopian tube out of your body and you would only have one. And so I was praying that this was going to be just an early miscarriage and that my body could take care of it naturally. So we got my HCG results back and it was at 168. So that told the doctor and myself that my body was already getting rid of this baby. So on the way home from the doctor, I called my mom immediately because I knew that she would have all of the right words. My mom would know how to make me feel better about what was happening to me. And I know that she's experienced this before herself. So I wanted to hear her opinion. And I just wanted her to make me feel better. And of course, she was absolutely devastated. She reassured me that I didn't do anything wrong. This was not my fault. And that God just decided that this baby needed to go to heaven because for whatever reason it wasn't developing properly. So after I got home, that's when a lot of the symptoms started. I started bleeding and I had some cramping, which just felt like a really bad period that night. So I took some ibuprofen and we went to bed early. It had been a really long day at this point, emotionally draining. Zach called his mom to let her know what happened because everybody was expecting us to send them a video of the heartbeat that we were going to hear on this ultrasound. And so we knew that we had to tell everybody that was expecting this the truth about what we learned. It was heartbreaking to hear them both crying on the phone to each other about it. I sent my dad a text to let him know because I couldn't call. It's just hard to get the words out. I feel like if I were to have called him, all he would have heard was sobbing on the other end, and he would have been, a little confused about what the problem was. So I sent him a long text about what we heard, and he actually called me immediately after, and was sobbing on the phone, telling me that he was so sorry that we had lost our baby, and that baby was up in heaven with God, and that he hoped that God would give us comfort in this time, and that he wished he could be in Minnesota with me just to give me a hug and tell me it was going to be okay. Everybody that we talked to told us not to give up hope, but to take our time and grieve, and to let my body heal and not rush anything, and to just focus on the fact that my body could get pregnant, because that in itself was a miracle and something very positive, especially after dealing with unexplained infertility, that we eventually would have a child in our arms. It just wasn't going to be this one. So some of the other symptoms that I had were more severe, but those came the next morning. So since I had taken the ibuprofen, I think it masked a lot of the pain that I felt, so I was able to sleep that night. But in the morning, after the medication had worn off, I had severe cramping. This was not like period cramps. This was so excruciating that I had to crawl out of bed on the floor to the bathroom. And I just remember that I felt so dizzy. I felt like I was gonna faint from the pain. I was sweating profusely. Like, you would have thought I was sitting in a sauna. I had sweat dripping down my back, down my chest. My face was covered in sweat. I was dry heaving over the toilet. I have never felt pain like that before. I'm not sure if that's similar to what a contraction feels like. Obviously, I've never had one. But if that's what mothers feel, you're amazing. I don't know how you can deal with it. I don't know how people can have natural births if that's truly what it feels like, because I was in so much pain that all I could say was, God, please help me. Please help me. I can't do this. Please help me. Please make the pain go away. Please make it stop. It just felt like somebody was stabbing me in my abdomen over and over and over, and twisting the knife repeatedly. It felt like your uterus was tender and sore, and it felt like somebody reached inside of you and was just squeezing it like this, like pulsing over and over, and there was nothing that you could do to control it. There was nothing you could do to make it stop. All I could do was breathe heavily and pray to make it stop. So since I was in so much pain, we decided to go to the ER, because my fertility doctor said that if it's an ectopic pregnancy, then that would be very dangerous. I would be in a lot of pain. If I'm doubled over, I need to go to the ER because I need to make sure that something didn't rupture and that I wasn't bleeding internally. So I was terrified that I had had an ectopic pregnancy and that I could possibly die from this. So since we live kind of out in the country, the hospital is about 30 minutes away. So I barely made it to the car. I got dressed somehow and crawled to the car and basically just sat in the car with a bag, dry heaving and praying God, please help me. God, please help me. Please make it stop. I can't do this without you. Please help me. Please help me. And my husband just kept saying, you're going to be okay. Just breathe. You're going to be okay. We're almost there. And I could feel him rubbing my back as he was driving, and it was just drenched. It was absolutely drenched. You, again, would have thought that I was in a sauna, and I was just profusely sweating. I didn't think we were going to make it to the ER. I thought I was going to pass out or have a seizure or something was going to happen to me because the pain wouldn't stop. Like, I couldn't move. When we got to the ER to get out of the car, like, I could barely walk. I was so hunched over, hanging onto my husband, going into the ER. Like, I've never, ever felt pain like that before. So we were checking in, and the lady was asking me all these questions, like, have you been exposed to COVID, and blah, blah, blah. And I just remember thinking, who the F cares? I'm in so much pain. I need to see a doctor now. But of course, I'm not like that. I'm polite. So I answered all of her questions as best that I could. I was still hunched over at the front desk. I was heavily breathing. I felt like I was going to throw up on her. I felt like I was going to pass out. So she signed us in, gave me a bracelet, and asked us to go sit in the waiting room for the doctor to come get me. So I just sat awkwardly, like sort of on my chair but off my chair, like trying to keep it together in the waiting room of the ER. And they finally were able to get me back, took my vitals, asked me what happened, talked to me about symptoms, and then they were able to give me some hydrocodone, acetaminophen or something like that. But anyway, it was like a very high dose of pain medication. So that really helped. Once that kicked in, I felt a lot better. So after running some tests, they determined that they didn't think it was an ectopic pregnancy. They just think that it was an early miscarriage, and that I was passing the baby, and that all I could do was take pain medication and go home. So they wanted to prescribe me like really strong pain medication, but I'm kind of more into the natural, holistic healing, and although yes, I probably could have taken that medication and it would have helped, I felt like I could get through it just on regular ibuprofen. I didn't really want to have to pay extra and go to the pharmacy and do all of that. After they were going to send me home, I really just wanted to go home and lay on my couch and just cry and be with my husband and grieve. So I opted out of the medication and I said, you know what, I'll just give it a few days. I'll take some ibuprofen. I will let this pass naturally. And if anything happens again or I get this pain again, I will make sure to come back. So they were totally okay with that plan. When I got home, still, of course, bleeding, cramping had gotten a little bit better. I went to the bathroom to go change my tampon. And I passed or had on the tampon a liver-like material, which I'm pretty sure was the baby. It was like about this big, like a little, like I said, I don't know how to describe it, a black liver-like skin-looking material, and I'm pretty sure it was the baby. It was the right shape and everything. It kind of was like a little kidney bean shape. And then a little bit later, I passed like a white skin-like material. I don't know if that was the sac or my uterine lining or part of the pregnancy. I don't know what that was, but it was very strange that it was white. It was skin-like, it was stretchy. And so I figured that that was all of the material that needed to come out. So that was pretty horrifying to see, because you just know in your heart that that is your baby. You were seeing your precious little baby who has died and has now come out of you. And honestly, it's the most overwhelming grief that I think you can ever feel. It's certainly the most grief that I've ever felt. And although I was in so much pain, excruciating pain, emotionally, physically, the hardest part for me was watching my husband cry. Because I felt like I had let him down. I know that it's not my fault. And I know that there is nothing I could do to prevent it. But you still have that guilt in the back of your mind that you disappointed your husband and your family and your friends. And like I said, hearing our parents cry over the phone just broke my heart. It hurt me almost more than the pain that I was going through, the physical pain. Even though I was only at 7 weeks, that was our baby. It had a heartbeat. It had a tail. It had a part of the brain developing. It had blood. It had little nubs for arms and legs. And we loved that baby so much. And I know for some of you, at 7 weeks, that's not considered a baby. But to us, that was our world. And this little baby right here hasn't left my side ever since that day. I think she knew that something really bad was happening to her mom. And I think she senses my pain and my sadness. And she's been helping me get through this. Of course, my husband has been extremely supportive and caring and loving and telling me that we're going to be okay, and that eventually we'll try again and we will have a baby in our arms one day. It's just that this one wasn't meant to be. And that's a hard fact to swallow. So, since I didn't show up for work the day I was at the ER, I felt like I owed my team an explanation. Because as a supervisor, you can't just disappear for a day without people noticing or wondering. And I didn't want to make up a story about a family emergency or that I needed some personal time. That's just not me. I am very open with my team, and I just felt like if I were to tell my team what happened and what I was going through, that I wouldn't have to go through this alone. I would have people that I could talk to, that I could lean on. If I was having a day where I was like, you know what, I just don't think I can make it through the day. Can you please take over some of my responsibilities, that they would understand, you know, why I was asking that of them. And so I told my team. Only a few of them know that I was going through infertility treatment and that we had been trying for a baby for so long. And so I definitely wanted to tell those people, you know, that are rooting for us and praying for us, because I just feel like I owe that to them as a friend and as a colleague, and I really care about these people, and I know that they care about me. So I knew there was no harm and telling them. So I told my team what happened and that I wouldn't be at work that day. And today I was sent this really sweet bouquet of flowers from my team. And it means the world to me because I know that they care. And I know that I'm loved and that I don't have to go through this alone. And it just gives me a lot of hope that eventually we will have a baby in our arms. A beautiful rainbow baby. So, after telling my story, I also wanted to go over some information or facts about early miscarriages so that this information can get out to more people and that maybe we can normalize it so that people can open up to those around them and understand why it happens, what happens. And I just want you to know that you're not alone. And that's the whole reason that I'm recording this journey, my infertility journey, as well as my early miscarriage. So some things that I learned after researching is that more than half of miscarriages are early pregnancy miscarriages. It's basically nature's way of eliminating an embryo that isn't developing properly. So it might have a genetic abnormality or chromosomal abnormality. So basically what happened, or what happens, is that the sperm and the egg meet. And that's super exciting and good and positive. But for some reason, they weren't a good match for each other. It could be the chromosomes in one or the other were missing. There was too many. They weren't matching properly. And so that baby can no longer develop. So the body gets rid of it. That's basically, the reasons that I've learned that it can happen. Of course, if you're a drinker, a smoker, you do drugs, you're around heavy chemicals, you have got hormonal imbalances, all of those things can also be a factor for an early miscarriage. Those aren't why I had an early miscarriage, because I don't do any of those things. I don't have any of those issues. I do have hypothyroidism, but that's been under control for quite some time now. So I don't think that it had anything to do with that. I honestly think that the egg and the sperm just weren't a good match. I'm not sure if you watched my other videos, you will know on my IUI number 2 that they found a very large follicle on cycle day 3. It was at a 15. And so I'm not sure if that had something to do with it. According to the blood test they did, that follicle wasn't active. But I'm not sure if that Avidril shot that I took triggered that one to release its egg. And so that was the egg that was used, because that would explain the egg not being healthy because it was from a previous cycle. So obviously it wasn't a healthy egg. It should have been eliminated on the first IUI cycle, but for some reason it stuck around and they could see it on the second IUI. I'm not sure if that's what happened. I honestly, I have no idea. I will never know. My husband and I will never know why this happened. But we're hanging on the hope that I can get pregnant. Obviously, my body can do it. We know that now because this was my very first pregnancy. And I can do it. I can do this. We're gonna get through it. We're gonna grieve. We're never gonna forget this baby. We will always hold this little blueberry in our heart. I really wanted to have this little blueberry. To my little blueberry, I hope you know that you were loved so much. Everybody was excited to meet you, and I will never forget you. Your daddy and I will never forget you. And I hope you're okay sharing your room and your crib with your sibling. We bought it for you, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to hold you in our arms. I hope that you're up in heaven looking down on us. And I hope that you can feel the longing that we have for you and the love that we have for you. And I'm so sorry that we never got to meet you. I love you, my little baby.